Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, we're going to kick off on a bit of an environment day. Both videos today linking Brexit with our government's assault on the environment, with the first on the not so much watering down as ripping out entirely our environmental commitments, such as they are, for the sake of a trade deal that is, by the government's own figures, worth nothing at all to our economy. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So yes, we've had another flurry of news regarding our capitulation in the pursuit of quick trade deals. We've got New Zealand, Mexico to discuss, but Australia, I want to say a few things about New Zealand and Mexico at some point if I get time. The news is coming thick and fast. In this video, I want to focus on the latest news with the Australian negotiations and how we have formally abandoned climate change commitments in pursuit of it. So back when Theresa May was Prime Minister, her withdrawal agreement, which was basically the same as the one Boris Johnson pushed through, but with a few things changed around, it included legally binding commitments on environmental standards. When Boris Johnson replaced her, he moved to switch some features of the agreement, including these environmental standards, from the legally binding treaty to what was termed the political declaration. Basically, the withdrawal agreement was in two main parts. The first part was the legally binding treaty. This was a firm commitment with a strong legal basis. It tied us to obligations that the government, well, they're trying to get out of, but they've got no legal right to do so because legally binding. Then there was the second part. This was called the political declaration and consisted of intentions. It's like, yeah, we're going to do this. Are you really? Yeah. Are you going to commit yourself to doing it? No. Well, because it wasn't legally binding, it wasn't worth the paper it was scribbled on. Basically, as far as I could tell, the political declaration existed to allow the government to pretend that it cared deeply about a whole load of things that the public didn't want to lose as a result of Brexit. People were starting to be turned on to the fact we're going to lose things with Brexit. It was the way of the government saying, no, look, we've written this thing down. Look, yeah, we're committing to it. It's all in this document, look, yeah. But the government would be under no legal obligation to protect it. As soon as Boris Johnson chucked workers' rights and environmental standards into the political declaration, we knew they were as good as finished. And sure enough, one by one, Johnson's government have been legislating to remove the protections that they were supposed to be not just maintained, but enhanced. Now, the latest scandal is the news that the government have agreed to drop Paris climate change commitments from the trade deal with Australia. Now, apart from anything else, it makes our hosting of COP26 particularly tragic. Boris Johnson claims that he wants to be a world leader on climate change. Perhaps he misunderstands. What we would take that to mean is that he should lead on tackling climate change, not accelerating it. Where is the concrete evidence that Boris Johnson is doing anything at all to tackle climate change? Like anything, even the slightest little thing. Beyond his less than worthless words, what evidence is there that after over 2 years of him being Prime Minister, that he's done anything? You know, he's pursued a trade policy that is explicitly trying to replace lost trade with our neighbours with more trade amongst Pacific nations, including Australia. You know, even if this were economically possible, which of course it is not, you'd be massively ramping up levels of pollution to do so. The carbon footprint of global trade is significant, so any moves to actively increase trade from 2 oceans away is a serious blow. You know, against any moves to tackle the worsening climate emergency. You know, it's not unlike trying to tackle violent crime by issuing every citizen with firearms. How did that work out in America? You know, it also reportedly caused a bit of a spat in the Johnson household. Johnson's latest ex-wife-to-be, Carrie Symonds, or is it Carrie Johnson now? I don't know, was reportedly fuming about the concessions, and it's alleged that she wants Truss removed from her position because of this. Liz Truss, the cabinet minister in charge of getting these trade deals. Symonds considers herself to be an environmentalist, which she may be, but I can't think that she's a particularly on the ball one when she's married to a prime minister whose entire policy for every department is to damage the environment further. This isn't Liz Truss alone doing this. You know, blaming Truss for agreeing to this measure with Australia, it's only down to Johnson's insistence that we get these trade deals quickly. The only way to get a trade deal quickly is to accept whatever the other side say. I mean, this is the point we're trying to make with trade deals, and I'll keep trying to make it. You know, people go, oh, you said trade deals will take for years. Proper trade deals do. Anyone can get a trade deal overnight. If you go, because the idea is with trade negotiations, you have what you want in the trade deal. The other side has what they want. You compare them. You go, right, okay, well, there's these similarities. That's easy. And then there's these whacking great differences. So then you spend years negotiating to meet in the middle. Well, if you just go to that meeting, go, well, this is what we want. And then the other side goes, well, this is what we want. All right, we'll just take what you want. You can get it all right. No problem. Easy. But let us also consider that it is Boris Johnson who wants us to replace our trade with Europe with more countries at the other side of the world. How is that environmentally responsible? His government are also responsible for the failure to secure chemicals to treat our effluents. Talking about that in the next video. But that's resulted in even poorer quality rivers in Britain. He took a helicopter to the G7 meeting in Cornwall, for goodness sake. What's the betting about him turning up to COP26 in a private jet? Needless to say, Truss has not been removed. In fact, the suggestion is that if there is to be any sort of reshuffle, and Boris Johnson has never actually had one in his 2 years as Prime Minister, then Truss would be more likely to get a promotion. She is currently the most popular minister amongst Conservative Party members. Largely, I suspect, because they think that she's the only one who's actually winning. You know, she's getting all these trade deals after all. Oh, isn't she brilliant? I mean, if they're not being made aware that every single one represents a huge capitulation on our part, then they will undoubtedly think that she is the most capable member of the government. Arguably, the most damaging thing Johnson could do to Truss is actually give her a promotion to a department where winds are impossible to spin, even for this government. But anyway, back to this turnip of a trade deal. Worthless economically, but valuable to Johnson politically, because it allows him to keep trolling out his Brexit wins. And it was also pointed out that it could raise some eyebrows as the Prime Minister claimed that we already had agreement before the summer. He did. Yeah. If we'd already agreed the terms of the deal in principle, which is what they were saying we had, why have we continued making concessions then? Could it be that Boris Johnson was lying again? And an article in The Independent that was talking about this also pointed out that Boris Johnson wrote about the Australian trade deal just last month, that it would reaffirm commitments to multilateral environmental agreements, specifically including the Paris Agreement. I mean, that was cobblers even at the time. Increasing trade via a more polluting trade route is never something you can describe as a commitment to environmental agreements, given that those agreements always involve moves to reduce our carbon footprint at the very least. But it also leads us to one of two conclusions. Either Johnson was lying there as well, or he meant those words at the time, sort of, and sacrificed them in order to get the deal, in which case it just highlights how weak our post-Brexit position is. Now, I'd be genuinely interested, I mean that, genuinely interested in hearing what Johnson or Brexit supporters think the correct conclusion to draw is. Are we weak, or do we not care about environmental standards? Has to be one of the two. It's possibly both, but it definitely has to be one of them. Either we are too weak to say no to Australia, a country thousands of miles away whose trade, even with this deal, doesn't add anything to our economy. Like, it's one thing to concede something you'd rather not to a really important political or trading partner. But you notice Australia have not been minded to concede anything in these talks for themselves. The fact of the matter is that Australia and the UK aren't all that important to each other trade-wise. There's political cooperation, sure, but that doesn't need a trade agreement. So are we weak? If not, then the argument is that we care so little for the environment that we conceded this point, not out of weakness, but because the Paris Agreement commitments are so worthless to us that it was the equivalent of giving nothing away from our point of view. Which is it? But those are my thoughts anyway. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.